And as creatives, we're so hypersensitive about our stuff. And so it feels very personal. Erica Badu says it like, I'm sensitive about my shit.
And you need to be comfortable in uncomfortable moments. You have to stay human. It's it's like not it's a non-negotiable. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unusual Creative Podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Kelley Williams, and I would love for her to just introduce herself, her pronouns, what she's been working on, and her current title, and we'll talk a bit more about a producer and what they do. So, Kelley, let the people know.
Yes. Hello, my name is Kelley Williams, and I go by she, her pronouns. And I work at Luminate. It's an entertainment data company. I'm a Jedi research manager. Jedi just means justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And as a creative, dancing, poetry, and acting, and just trying to get back into that and see what that looks like at this stage and in this time in my life. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. And so, just for context around this conversation, Kelley and I met several years ago. I think it might even be a decade at this point, but several years ago back in Pasadena. And we were both working at a place called Pasadena Playhouse. And at that time, I was really starting in my producing career. I was a company manager there, and I don't remember what your title was specifically.
I switched so much. I was I was in the box office and I was office manager, executive assistant, development, just all the
That's
things.
true. Yes, all the hats, all the hats. But yeah, we bonded and created a friendship and have stayed in touch since. So, yeah, I thought you would be a good fit for the conversation as a consultant who works a lot with creatives and small businesses, and just helping them understand a bit more about what a producer does, because that title means so many different things to so many different people.
Yeah.
So I thought you would be a good fit for the conversation. And to kick it off, I'm curious how you would define the role of a producer, just in general, in layman terms, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Producer, I would describe it as someone who a little bit of a puppeteer, kind of has an understanding of all aspects of either of a film or a play, just the things that I've personally worked in. Yeah, I know sometimes they deal with the money element, the budget, but yeah, the different kind of producers. I don't particularly know the exact definitions for the different types of producers, but I do know they're kind of making sure everything is in line and the show is successful.
Yeah, ideally. Ideally, that's the
Ideally,
goal.
ideally.
Yeah, it's interesting
Right.
when I'm in those conversations, very much like, oh, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a creative consultant or I'm a creative producer. And usually the way that I try to simplify it is we manage scope and budget. So just making sure that
Mm,
whatever resources are needed, whatever the creative intent and creative priorities are, that they're protected. And then from
mm,
pre-production, so whatever that looks like for the art form, if that's concept, but whatever that phase looks like, pre-production
right.
all the way to execution or all the way to the delivery or the end of it, just making sure that things run smoothly, that the funds, yeah, like you said, the funds are right and they're
Uh-huh.
allocated accordingly. And that, yeah, if there are ways that you can help make decisions effectively that um, make the show a success, as you mentioned, but also make sure that all the stakeholders are contributing. Because I think
Mm,
a lot of the leadership role of a producer is just making sure the right people are in the conversation before the decision is made.
right, right,
Right?
right,
We don't need to know everything. We just need to know the people to ask or how to find the answer. So
right.
being resourceful, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so I guess that transitions to some skills that you think a producer might need to have, or at least maybe some of the ones that you recognized a good producer that you've worked with in the past had.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely someone who, isn't afraid to kind of, s not step in it, but just kind of, someone who has a strong voice and can vouch for others. Someone who is organized, can see the bigger picture, can see where missing pieces might be. Definitely a strong problem solver, critical thinker, um, a mediator, uh, also someone who um, yeah, can just kind of calm if the situation, if things, in any time when creative processes or in productions, things can get a little hectic. So someone who can kind of like, okay, like let's solution oriented. Like I don't give me the problems and we're gonna find the
Yeah.
solution. They're just like and able to kind of to delegate and to really good at communication. I think that's what I've seen of people who are producers tend to have a lot of those traits.
Yeah, I would agree. And the fact that you said mediator is such a good point because it does
Mhm.
have a lot to do with listening to both sides and being in agreement and alignment before we all move forward or
Mhm.
spend the money or make the decision, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's a big part of the role. So yeah, I'm glad that you called it that. Um, I'll just
Mhm.
say yes and to your list. What else did I add? I guess, yeah, great communicator for sure. Personable. I feel like, especially in the creative
Yes.
world, you need to be comfortable talking to creatives with different personalities and strong
Yep.
personalities. And you need to be comfortable in uncomfortable moments. Like you mentioned,
Yes.
there could be high tensions, there could be directors
Mhm.
or executive producers or just folks at a higher level
Right.
that maybe just need to be reeled in or just be made aware of things, and you have to be
Yeah.
comfortable in all of those spaces. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would also say they need to be good at asking questions. I think
Mm,
sometimes people, it takes a certain type of person to ask a question before they just respond. Working
yeah.
on that. Uh, but yeah, I've recognized mentors and other really solid producers that I've loved working with, and I'm like, oh, they didn't just. I came to them with a question, and
Right.
they came back with you know some food for thought that came back in a form of a question, and I'm glad that that's how that interaction went versus
Yeah.
blanket
Yeah.
answering something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like I feel like they're digging deeper. Whether they're I feel like which is such a unique ability just in general of someone being able to kind of get the other person to see the solution or possible solutions of like kind of like okay let me help you just like I can help you find the answer a little bit because sometimes some people need to feel that empowerment
Mhm.
or to feel particularly when you have we have directors or you have like cinematographers, you have choreographers, you're like okay strong personalities, strong
Yeah.
vision, so how can you kind of like
Bring it.
you're helping to
Yeah.
yeah.
That's such a good point. Oh, that's such a good point. So, can you think of other relationship dynamics, whether professional or not, that are similar to creatives and producers? And I guess when I say creatives, I mean that, like you said, cinematographers, choreographers, dancers, artists, directors. I mean,
Mhm.
the list is endless. But I guess other dynamics that you see a similar relationship.
Ooh. I guess maybe like in a sports world, when you have like managers
Mm.
um who have to work with both the coach and both I guess maybe in baseball managers kind of more do that, working with like the team as well as like the owners and having everyone has specific needs and wants and you're like, okay, how can we do this in a way where it's within the budget and people have their needs met and they feel seen and people feel supported and um yeah, I think definitely that happens a lot in the sports world. um Probably mothers. I feel like I feel like just
Yeah.
a general man, like
Yeah.
like my mother for sure, like I'm just like amazed, like she ceases to amaze me, just even now having to deal with like with my dad and his needs and my brother, and then she's helping to take care of uh her 95-year-old mother, and then she has like, her hobbies, and then she's working with the church and she's doing there, and so just all these different moving parts in the way that she um is able to delegate, and also dealing with like, tensions within family sometimes, or how people communicate or don't communicate. um and when she's like, okay, we're just going to make a decision, this is what it's going to be like, while still keeping her composure but still honoring herself. Yeah, that's is definitely like you're producing this whole multiple
They don't call it that, but
projects.
they should. But they should.
Right. Yes, like, definitely that. Like, there are mothers out there who are really producing the show of life, of families, or like, so I'm like, "Whoa."
That is so well said. I never thought about the sports sort of analogy or just like the commonalities
Mhm.
there. That's a bit of a world that's outside of my wheelhouse, but it's not to say that there's, not more to learn about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sort of still processing that answer because that's solid. But to your answer or your response around mothers producing life and their kids' lives and families and emotions and
Yeah.
whole educations. There's a lot.
Yes.
There's a whole lot, and I guess to some degree, yeah. When you think about the skills that apply, when you think about the relationship dynamics, and when you think about just like the type of passion that you need to have, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
in order to show up and do the role every day, it is, yeah, it translates. It translates.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's great. So I would ask, what advice would you give to someone maybe who's new to the industry, a new artist who is
Mhm.
working with a producer for the first time, how to
Mhm.
maybe get the best out of the collaboration?
As an actor, or more so as like as a probably direct, I feel like.
That's a good question. I mean, I'm curious about your perspective from an actor or a writer, or I know that you've
Mhm.
been a dancer as well. But in moments where you know that you have been able to just work really well with a producer and you were able to feel seen and just respected,
Yeah,
and maybe
yeah.
in spaces where you weren't there, you know that that person was advocating for you. How,
Right,
yeah,
right.
how can you help somebody else understand maybe how you arrived at that point or any advice that you might have to share? What?
Yeah, yeah. Um, and well, it's time I think with my family, so I'm not gonna use that 'cause I feel like it's a little different. But but I was thinking about, I was like, what are my, 'cause I feel like as an actor, I feel like you don't get to have um as much as of an close relationship with the producer. I feel like you're just we're the moving pieces, the piece on the
Right.
chessboard. So we really don't aren't communicating much. But when I worked on a documentary, I worked on this documentary, Light Girls, and one of the producers named Stephanie Frederick. And at first I didn't know, it was like my first encounter. I was like, what is this? Like, oh, a producer. And she's just like, yeah. And I was helping, so I was doing the researching and kind of the written structure of like what we wanted this, like the documentary to look like. And I think really just building a general relationship, like, as a person, like, I
Mm,
really liked her, um, as a human being. Like, there was common interests, and knowing her, like, history and her track record and what she does, and, um, respecting that, and also having an understanding of, like, okay, this is someone who's been in the business for some time,
mhm,
so there should be a certain respect
mhm,
there, um, and just, um yeah, open lines of, I think, for the first time, I think also coming in as a student of like, okay,
mhm,
I'm here to learn and understand, and watching how she moves, and then different the way she talks to the director, and the way she talks to like the editor, and all these relationships that she has, and if there's conflict, thinking of, okay, how can I not be a part of the conflict, but how can I be part of the solution, of like, let me make her life and everyone's life, a little bit more easier. And so what initiative can I take? What are things that I can do um to be a part of yeah, of the solution? Because you don't want to, like, I don't want to be another thing that's like another thorn,
Yeah.
you know. So it's like
Yes.
listening to, if there is, maybe an issue arises, between, like, from the director, it's okay listening, like, where can I help ease that and try to get ahead of it,
Mhm.
before she has to come to me to be like, this is a problem and you're not helping, or like, okay, I don't have to worry about that because Kelly's going to handle it. Oh, she's already communicated, with the editor. She has communicated with the location manager. Okay, good. So, like, doing just, yeah, just being proactive. I think that really helps to not only, like, nurture the relationship, but also nurtures the confidence of the producer and you and your job. If you're having that mindset, that just really helps. Helps you, helps the production, helps the relationship, helps the trust. So
I can
yeah.
so relate to that. I always say, or I have been saying for some time, that especially when it comes to any of the actors or company, and even if we're working with musicians, I'm not able to do what you're able to do. People bought tickets to see what you're able to do. So let me
Right,
take
right.
whatever stress I can off your plate. Let me make sure,
Yeah.
yeah, that the things that don't really concern what you're here to do, that they're not a
Mhm.
part of your concern. And honestly, starting there is usually a pretty smart place to sort of understand, like, where the questions are, where some of the issues might be,
Yeah.
and just how you can be most supportive and helpful. But yeah, you make a very good point of just like knowing that somebody has an sort of a big picture view of
Yeah.
all the parts, and making sure that they don't want to get involved in the drama. They really want everybody to succeed. It's just like,
Right.
yay, I can work in this environment. And yes, this person
Right.
head on straight. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's reaffirming. Okay, so I think that we're slowly getting to the end, but I do have a couple more questions,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
could. So I was going
Yeah.
to say, can you share an experience, and whatever you're comfortable sharing, but in terms of
Uh-huh.
like a good or bad experience that you had, where a producer was directly involved? I know that you mentioned one specifically where it felt like you were working with an editor, a producer, but if there were any
Mhm.
like other good experiences or others that you were like, oh, it would have been better if this person brought this to the table and they just didn't have that knowledge, or whatever the example might be. I
Right.
think it would
Right.
be, yeah, lovely to talk.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I think we all know, like, how much, like, respect or just relationships, like, like, you want to be able to. I've seen where producers have stepped in it a little bit too much and caused uh just how you speak to people, and some people can just be a little bit too, like, 10 toes down, just like, this is what it is. And they're butting heads too
Yeah.
much. And I've seen a producer butt heads so much that they lost, they weren't able to continue in the project. Um, and so I think, yeah, I think just um, that just the human element, just always remembering, as much as possible. And that's such an art form, I think, no matter where you are, of just like, okay, how can I communicate and get what needs to be done with someone who may, creatives, like, you know, um, who Erica Badu says it, like, I'm sensitive about my shit. Like, like, I'm sensitive about, like, and rest creatives were so, like, so hypersensitive about our stuff. And so it feels very personal. It feels very, and in your lane. And so someone has a different vision, or someone, we got to cut that or whatever. Um, you got to figure out how to mitigate around that, and how to, like, okay, let me try to, like, ease this to get you to kind of, um yeah. So I think just using that as a trait, I've seen people be able to do that beautifully and communicate in a way and get it done, and knowing when and how to tell creatives, like, I know you want this, but it's you gotta let this
Yeah.
piece go. You gotta, like, whatever it is, like, look, like, we're trying to, like, yeah, I think that would be. what I've seen, what my, limited experience is really with producers, but
Thank you for sharing. No, that's such a good point because you have to stay human. It's it's
yeah.
like not it's a non-negotiable because the reality is,
Yeah,
yeah, you are dealing with creative people, and not to say all creative people are the same, but there tends to be a sensitivity, especially if you're talking about their work specifically, and also
yeah,
just what we do is really a privilege and it's a beautiful thing. And so ideally we can approach it with that sort of energy, but in
mhm,
spaces that
yeah,
we don't, yeah, I can see how that is. It just doesn't make for the best experience for everybody,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Okay, my last question. Ooh,
yeah.
zodiac question. Excuse me. Zodiac signs as a fellow
Yeah.
Leo, gang gang. Um,
Yay.
what are some zodiac signs you think? Well, and we'll just stick with sun signs because I know we could spend a whole nother conversation.
Oh my gosh,
Woo!
yes.
But yeah, what do you think? Some sun signs that would be a good fit for a producer or a creative leader. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, any that come to mind?
Well, the first that came to mind, was, Capricorn.
Mm.
And, only because I had my friend Keisha came to mind. I was like, because she's just so good at, like, yeah, just, like, very detail oriented. Yeah, Virgo, Leo, it's Capricorn, um, maybe Sag.
Is
I
Sag
think
just
Sag is
in
also
January? I always forget.
either, like, December.
Okay.
Are they December, January? They're right before
Okay,
Capricorn.
okay, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I also feel like a Sagittarius and a Virgo too, they're tell it like it is kind of people. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
they just gonna say it
yeah.
and let the pieces
True,
fall where they may.
right. And I think it's true, and I think a Virgo and a Sag would be able to deliver it a little bit softer than a Capricorn, though.
Ooh, okay. Noted.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Kelley, what a delight. I really appreciate the conversation and just your perspective in general, always. And thank you all. Thank you, audience, for joining us. We'll be back with another episode soon. Take care.